Hey, what's up YouTube? If you are a CRF450L owner and you're thinking about going to a Reckluse clutch and you've been debating about which clutch to get, whether the full clutch kit or the new RadiusX clutch. Well, I say new. I'm not real sure how new it is, but this is the clutch kit that you don't have to replace your clutch basket or your clutch cover, and you can save yourself about 400 bucks by going this route as opposed to the full clutch. So if you've got a fairly new bike and your clutch is not basket is not notched out yet or anything, this is a good option for you. This is going to be a quick video about how to go about installing and adjusting that RadiusX clutch for a Honda CRF450L. So sit back and watch, and hopefully this will be helpful for some of you. So I kind of skipped all the disassembly part of it. It's pretty self-explanatory. You take off the skid plate. That's 3 bolts down there to take your skid plate off. Then you take off your plastic side cover. I think that's 4 bolts that hold it on. And then you take the clutch cover off, and that's going to expose your stock clutch. I've already had my clutch in here. I'm doing some adjustment to it, and so I've already pulled the clutch pack out. Some stuff you need to be aware of when you're taking this apart. There's some parts that you're going to reuse from this stock clutch pack. And the last 2 things in here, once you take your discs out and your friction plates out, there's 2 rings left. One of them they call a judder spring, and I'm not sure if you can see it on video. It's not flat. It's actually a little bit concave, kind of dish shaped. This piece you want to keep. This is going to go back in the Reckluse clutch pack. And then this seat right here is going to come out. That's the last thing that's in there. You need to make sure that it comes out, because when it sits way down in there, you might miss it. But that comes out. That does not get reused. You can set that aside. The final thing you need to be aware of is your throw out. So sometimes this throw out, when you pull that cover off, that washer right there will get stuck to the cover. Make sure it's not stuck there. So you got the throw out bearing right there, you can see it, and then you got a washer. Those are both going to get reused, and Reckluse actually includes in this kit another washer that goes on top of this to add a little more spacing. And so you're going to have the stock setup down in there and another washer on top of it. And you can leave it in here if you want while you're working on it, because it just stays in there, or you can pull it out, but make sure that that washer doesn't get stuck to your clutch cover, and that you install the washer that Reckluse includes on top of it. And I'll show that here in a minute. So once you get everything pulled out, the first step is to put these deals in the clutch basket, and they're included with it, and they go down in these slots right here, and they go with kind of the U shape facing up, and you'll just pinch it a little bit, slide it all the way to the bottom, make sure it's pushed out, and you put those all the way around the perimeter. That's going to get all of those seated in there pretty easy. Alright, the next thing you do is you start putting your clutch pack in, and there is a guide in the instruction manual that goes with the order, but the first thing that goes in there is the EXP. And I've got my EXP over here. This is actually what I was making adjustments to. This is actually what I was making adjustments to, and so this will be the first piece that goes back down in there. Alright, when you get your Reckluse clutch, this EXP disc comes preset with medium tension springs. So these are these red springs, and it's got 6 of them, 3 on each side, and that's the preset is for medium. And what that does is it governs the RPM at which this clutch starts to engage. Now with my CRF450L, I found that I need to run the idle up just a little bit, because it's such a lean running motorcycle, and so with the idle adjusted up, then this clutch wants to engage while it's sitting idling. So what I'm going to do, the clutch comes with some heavy duty springs and some light springs. The heavier duty ones are the blue ones. The lighter springs are the silver ones that come in the kit. And so you take the 3 blue springs that are in here and you replace 3 of the springs on one side of the EXP. And to replace these, it's just a matter of taking your screwdriver and you're going to push down on that screw and turn it counterclockwise, and that'll open it. Alright, once you get the red springs out, you put the blue springs in there. You've got these little holders, and it helps to line these up. If you notice, the slot on the holder is kind of lined up with the end on there, and then down in this hole you can see there's a slot down there, so that end is going to go down in that slot. So when you line it up, it helps to go ahead and set it in there so that that will be lined up with that slot. Then you just push down on it and you turn it clockwise, and that's going to lock that in, and that'll have your EXP set up for heavy duty or high RPM engagement. Okay, this is the diagram that Reckluse includes in the instruction manual, and you can see here's the clutch basket sleeves, the way they slide down in. This is probably the most intimidating part of this, is making sure that you get everything back in correct and in the right order. So I've already demonstrated putting those sleeves down in the clutch basket. The next thing that goes in is the EXP, and then you start your stack. Reckluse includes 7 of these, I think they call them drive plates. So, I'm sorry, 6 of these drive plates, and then there's 6 friction discs. And then as you get towards the end of the stack, the last few things that go in here, you're going to get to a wavy disc, and I'll show that, a thinner judder friction disc, and you can tell it apart from the others just by looking at it. And then you've got that judder spring that came out of the stock basket that you're going to reuse. Then you've got another disc and another friction plate in there. So I'm going to show you my stack, how it goes back in there, and then stack it down in there. But this is included with the manual. The most confusing part is towards the end right here, but if you just follow it and make sure you get them in order, you shouldn't have a problem. So over here I've got my clutch stack kind of laid out the way that it's going to go in the bike. You got the EXP, then you got a pressure plate, friction disc, 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 and then you've got the wavy disc, and I don't know if you can see it on the video here, but it's got some little waves in it, right? And then the next thing is the thin judder friction disc, and you can see how it looks different. It doesn't have the same type stuff on it. It's a lot thinner. Then you've got the judder spring that you took out of the stock basket, and that judder spring goes with the cupped part facing upward. So remember, that's not a flat disc, it's kind of cup shaped, and the cup portion of it faces upward. Then you got another pressure plate and another friction disc. That's all that goes in there. So that's the stack and how it fits down in the basket. This is the washer that Reckluse includes that goes on top of the throwout, and so that'll go on top of the throwout before you start assembling it. So in order of saving time here, I'm not going to show me putting all these in, but that's the order that they're all going to go in. So I've installed my clutch pack down to the wavy disc, and it's pretty obvious when you look at it, it's different. And that one goes on there. The next thing that goes on is the thin EXP disc, and that's this one. You'll be able to see it's the only one that's different from the others. It's a little bit thinner, and the friction pads on it are different. And so one thing to note on here, make sure that you're lining this up with clutch basket, and it's possible to put it in like this where it's in between, and you're going to think you've got it right, but it's going to cause you issues. So make sure it's sliding down in those clutch basket liners there. Alright, then the next thing that goes on is your your jetter spring. And again, remember it's kind of a cupped spring, so you want the cupped side facing out, and it goes just like that. Then you go back and you put the last pressure plate in and the last friction disc, and so you're just lining up. Oops. You're just lining it up, that pressure plate with your basket, and then the friction disc with it. And that's got all your parts put in your clutch basket. Now the only other thing we got to do is install this washer on top of the throwout. That's included with the kit. And there's a... Hey, so I just want to stop right at this point in the video and point out I was talking and not paying attention to what I was doing. Even though I was telling you not to do it, I did it myself, and that's making sure that those ears on those friction plates are down in the basket, the liners of the basket, and not those other notches in the basket. So it's real easy to do. I put the bike all the way back together and started trying to do the adjustment. It wouldn't adjust at all. The clutch wouldn't work at all. It just stayed engaged the whole time. And so if you put one of these in and it doesn't work once you get it in, then go back and make sure that you have those ears down inside the clutch basket liners and not inside those other little gaps. It's real easy to get it backwards, and like I said, I did it on video. I just didn't want to go back and reshoot the whole video, even though I did have to pull it back apart. So pay attention to what you're doing. Other than that, the way that I got the stack in there was the correct way. All right, so keep on watching. All right, once you got your clutch pack put back down in here, and you've got that extra washer put on the throwout bearing, and the throwout bearing sitting there, the next thing that goes on is your clutch pressure plate. That just slides back down in there the same way you took it off. And then you're going to use the springs. You're going to reuse your old bolts, but you're going to use the springs that Reckluse sends with the clutch. So these just alternate in there. On mine, I've got a red one and a silver one, and so you're just going to alternate red and silver. All the way around it. And then you're going to tighten these bolts in a crisscross pattern, kind of crisscrossing back and forth. Don't over tighten these. They're only a 9 foot-pound torque, because really all they're doing is they're bottoming out in a hole, and so you don't want to just crank them way down. So you really need a torque wrench for this, and 9 foot-pounds is the torque for these, which is pretty low. So be careful and don't go too tight. Snap one of them off, then you'll have issues. All right, so once you get your springs and your bolts torqued down, the next thing you're going to want to do is put in the spacer that goes in between the clutch cover and the case. That spacer adds a gap because you've added a little extra space to your clutch. So you gotta add some space to your clutch cover, and this is the way Reckluse has decided to do it. I can't really show you mine. I've already had this on here once and it's stuck to the clutch cover. I didn't want to pull it off and damage it, but you'll see it in your kit. It's just it looks like a gasket, but it's a thick gasket that goes in between the clutch cover and the case. So make sure you install that. You're going to put that back in there. Put these bolts back in. If you're wondering what pattern they go in, the long one, the long bolt right there, is the one that goes in the upper portion right here. So if you take them out and you're not sure what goes where, make sure that goes back in there. Once you got your spacer in, your clutch cover goes back on, you're going to tighten these bolts again in a crisscross pattern, tightening them up. They only get tightened to 7 foot-pounds. So again, don't get crazy with them. It's just 7 foot-pounds on these, and get them torched down. That's going to have your clutch installed. Then you put your plastic back on, your skid plate back on it, and then it's just a matter of adjusting the throw out on the clutch. All right, once you get your Reckluse clutch in, you're going to notice your clutch is tight up against the perch. You don't really have any slack in your clutch anymore. And if you do, you're going to have to do some adjustment. But it should be pretty tight, especially if you got a newer bike. Reckluse includes this rubber band that you put in here and you put around your clutch. And this is to check the adjusted gap in the clutch. And so you're going to start the bike, and what you're looking for is that when you rev the bike, at the end of the clutch lever you have 1/8 to 1/2 of an inch of play as the bike revs and then comes back to idle, and then revs and comes back to idle. If it comes back too far, in other words, it comes back more than 1/2 an inch, if you rotate your adjustment outward away from you, that's going to reduce the amount of travel, and if you rotate it towards you, that's going to increase the amount of travel. So reducing the amount of travel decreases the amount of clutch engagement. It's basically making this clutch cable longer as if your clutch is pulled in, and it's decreasing the amount that the Reckluse clutch is engaged. Rolling it back towards you increases the amount that the clutch is engaged. So I'll start it up and show you what it should look like. And so that's how you adjust it right there. You're looking for roughly about that much free play in there. And then once you get that done, you're going to go through the break-in procedures that are in the manual, and then you're going to test it again. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope this helps some of you out there. If you're wondering how the Reckluse works, the jury's still out on that for me. It does increase the pull on your clutch lever, so the clutch is harder to pull. The trade-off is you don't have to use it as often, and when you do have to pull the clutch, you don't have to pull it as far in to get full disengagement. So I mainly bought it so that I'm doing tight single track stuff or riding in the woods, that the bike doesn't stall. Like these bikes tend to not have a lot of weight in the engine, and so it's pretty easy to stall them when you're down in first gear going slow, and so that's what I put the Reckluse in there for. It's a pretty expensive part, and it's a lot different to me because I've never ridden a bike with a Reckluse on it. So I'm not real sure if I think it's worth the total expense, but I've already got it and I'm going to give it a good shot. So again, thank you for watching my video. I hope this helps you, and just remember,